To say that I'm into gaming would be somewhat of an understatement. I'm always on the lookout for new games to add to my collection, even though most of the time I don't really get a chance to play them very often. There's just so many games that you can collect these days. There's single player games, there's multiplayer games, there's deck building games, and I'm not talking about virtual games that you would add to your Steam library. I'm talking about board games. Board gaming really exploded in the last 5 to 6 years. I mean, while this video really isn't about that cultural event in the world, I would like to take a really brief moment to shed a light on how important board gaming was in my childhood. Back in 2012, a good friend of mine came over and brought a game called Dominion. You may have heard of it or even played it, or played a game very similar to it. It's a deck building game. You buy the single box and you get all the cards you need to play it, and that's about it. It's a fun, simple game, and I probably will never play it anymore because I've played it too much. But at this time, for me in 2012, a new game that wasn't Monopoly or Sorry completely blew my mind. I had no clue that there was anything outside of the regular games that you could just find, lying around in your house already. So of course, with my mind being open to new possibilities, I went to the one place that you can get credible and legally sound information: the library. You thought I was going to throw you for a loop and say the internet and, it'd be a joke, but no, I don't. The library only had Connect 4, so I did go to the internet next. My mind was open to a whole new world, and I started collecting like crazy. A lot of the times I would end up just buying games off the shelf because they looked cool on the box art, only then to figure out that later that day that the game itself really wasn't worth playing ever again. At the time, there was a show called Tabletop that was hosted by Will Wheaton on the Geeks and Sundry YouTube channel. I watched that all the time, and a lot of the games I still have in my collection today are games that were featured on that show. It's kind of where I got my start, where I started finding games to collect, and a lot of those games on there are fantastic games that still hold up to this day. But I was in a brand new hobby, something that had completely opened my mind, something for me to spend all my time in and devote all my money to. This was just a new beginning for my life. Or was it? Was this new to me? Or had I been here before? Had I experienced this feeling before of there being other games outside of what I was used to? Was there some deep, dark, hidden memories buried in the corners of my psyche that I had covered up because of all of my childhood trauma? No, I had just forgotten that I had played other board games before Dominion. It all started back in '04. My brother, Philip, and I were at Walmart looking for the newest Bionicle sets, but this was kind of in between waves. They weren't really releasing any new sets just quite yet, when he stumbled upon a board game that would completely change our lives. It was this game where you could create your own battlefield and build your armies with various different characters and fight for honor and glory. This wasn't your regular game of Risk or Stratego? I actually don't know how to say it. No, this was something different. This was something for men. This was something for big boys. This was a masterpiece. This was the next step in evolution of mankind. This was Heroscape. Heroscape was this turn-based strategy war game that used miniatures and a very cool system to create your own battlefield. Now, there's plenty of videos out there still to this day that explain in more detail what Heroscape is, how to play, all the different expansions you can buy. That's great. I'm not here to talk about what Heroscape is exactly. Again, I'm really just here to talk about what Heroscape meant to me in my life. But let me put out 4 really quick points to kind of catch you up as to what Heroscape is. Heroscape is a game where you build armies of units and you fight against your enemy. The figures you select for your army consist of basic units and hero figures, which we'll talk about later. You get to build the layout of the boards yourself. And of course, the best part, the entire game takes place in a world where many different universes all converge into one. Now, I know Heroscape isn't the first brand to ever use a multiverse. These days you have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which uses it very well, bringing all these characters from different movies and shows and comics and whatever all together. The multiverse as an idea is something much more common today than it was back in 2004. So you can imagine me, as just a 6-year-old, being blown away when you told me that Vikings and knights and World War II soldiers and robots and cyborgs could all fit on the same battlefield and fight each other. And yes, there was a story to it, but I honestly never really got too deep into it. I was too busy crafting my own stories, building long-lasting friendships, and setting up horrible, horrible betrayals between friends that had been together forever. No, my stories weren't any better than the commercials that they showed on TV.
Will you fight? Take down bad guys? Yeah, I can handle that.
Not only could you build your army from different factions, but you had different units and hero characters that you could all throw together to create your own personal killing squad. You could pick from really whatever genre you wanted. You had characters like Agent Carr, who is the stand-in for Neo in The Matrix. Or you had Sergeant Alexander Drake, who was for every history buff in the room, since he was from the World War II era. You had Deathwalker 9000 for all the Warhammer 40K fans, although obviously he was a little more toned down than Warhammer 40K. That way it could be marketed to a broader audience, aka children like myself. I don't think my mother would have ever let me get into Warhammer 40K as a child. The list just goes on, and when you select your hero characters, they're leading into battle. The unit characters, which are a squad-based system, and they also match different universes, and you can combine them. You can take the hero character and put him with his specific unit that you can buy in a separate expansion, or you can just mix and match. You can do whatever you want. I still remember picking my favorite heroes and combining them with my favorite unit characters and placing them on the battlefield to fight my brother, and us going late into the night on a school night and our mother telling us that we had to get all the pieces off the table because dinner was ready and we had been using the dining room table to play. And I just remember telling her, no, we can't, because this is far more important than eating. And then us getting savagely beaten because we weren't behaving. So we tore down our armies as well as the map, but that was okay because the next best thing about Heroscape was you could build and create your own maps. The board for Heroscape was made of these hexagonal plastic base plates that could all be connected together. There were plenty of different terrain types. There was grass, stone, sand, snow, lava, rock, and then there were pieces of terrain that were harder to traverse, like water, ice, lava. But what was great, not only could all the pieces interlock, but you could actually stack the pieces on top of each other. And this would give you height advantages when you were playing the game sometimes. So you could create small rolling hills, even all the way up to giant mountains. Or if you got the right expansions, you could put glaciers or lava pits or trees and bridges. You could make a moat. You could even buy a castle expansion set that I remember having actually 2 of them, and you could just build these enormous structures. You could build anything that you wanted, granted that you had the money to buy all the expansions. And lucky for me, my brother had collected not only every expansion that had come out by 2007, but a close friend of ours did the same, and that friend ended up selling all his parts to us. And so we had so many pieces, and we could build practically whatever we wanted. Honestly, it was nuts. The maps that we created were just legendary, and I'm really wish that I had some photos to show it off, but unfortunately I can't find any. But this part of my childhood was just amazing, being able to build these extravagant landscapes and battle arenas. It was perfect. Until tragedy struck the family. 2008 was a strange year. It was a leap year, and it was also the year of the economic housing crisis in the United States. That doesn't really matter, it doesn't pertain to this story, but I just thought I'd give you some context. But what was so devastating to me was that at this time my own flesh and blood betrayed me and swept the rug right out from under my feet. My brother, after all this time, sold all of his Heroscape on eBay for a measly $500. That was nothing. For everything that we had been through, for all the battlescapes we created, everything we had collected, it was not worth $500. He had moved on. He had grown up from playing board games and drinking Capri Sun to playing Wii Sports Resort Plus and drinking Dr. Pepper, although both of those are actually pretty cool. I wouldn't mind playing Wii Sports Resorts Plus again. Maybe I should do a video on that too. Everything was gone. Heroscape had left the family, and not soon after, the brand itself would disappear as well. Now, I don't want to tell anybody that Heroscape's last years in production were bad. I honestly don't know. I never bought any of the sets, but for me personally, it felt like a slow decline and then a quick death. In 2008, Wizards of the Coast took over the production of Heroscape. Now, at the time, Heroscape had been slowing down, expansions weren't coming out as often, and Wizards decided to shift the focus from original characters to Dungeons & Dragons characters. Now, yes, later in the years, the same brother, Philip, and I would end up playing quite a bit of Dungeons & Dragons, and that's probably why I liked it so much, because it reminded me of Heroscape with the figures and whatnot. But for me as a child, I didn't know any of these characters. I wanted Heroscape, not Dungeons & Dragons. Not too long after this shift, Wizards of the Coast would cancel Heroscape and stop production of all different sorts of sets, expansions, whatnot. It was over. In 2015, Wizards did release a board game that connected in line with their Magic of the Gathering universe, and it used the same rule sets and similar figures, but things were just different. The terrain pieces were made of paper this time, and it didn't do well, and to my knowledge, it didn't last longer than a year.
And apparently what they did was they basically took the whole Heroscape concept, including the dice, remember the classic tiles, and just cheapened it up, because instead of giving you a box full of these, instead you get this now. And the reason I'm showing this is because these games right now are being marked down at most Toys R Us. I think I got my copy for 12 bucks.
Really, the last piece of evidence that Heroscape ever existed is from some older Marvel Legend toys. The figure stands that they came with were actually reused from the molds of Heroscape base plates. But Heroscape was dead. It was no longer thriving. It was just a memory. Or was it?
Do you wanna play the blame game? We still know all the rules.
Heroscape is actually alive and well today. You can tell just by the amount of videos that there are on YouTube. And even if you venture out into the internet, you can find websites like Heroscapers.com, which my brother and I went to when we were children. And there are still members of that community alive who are posting daily new rules or custom characters or special scenarios. And there's even still tournaments going on regionally around the world where you can still play Heroscape as a game. There's people who continue on all that fun and joy that I had as a child. It's sometimes hard to let go of things that we remember so fondly, like Heroscape in my life. But it's even harder when you've let go of something you think that has died, and it hasn't. It's still going on, and in fact, it's alive and well. Looking at it, you feel almost some regret or responsibility that you still have to be a part of it because you loved it so much as a kid, and after saying goodbye to it, you realize after all this time, it is still alive. I should go back because I loved it so much as a kid. But sometimes what's most important is letting it go and moving on. It's okay to acknowledge that you loved something at some point, but now you've moved on. Now there are other things in your life that are more important to you. There's other hobbies that have taken its place, or that you're just not interested in it anymore. Sometimes that's what's most important. So there's a reason that I'm still into tabletop gaming to this day, and it's because of the great impact that Heroscape had on my life. But there's also many reasons why I don't go back and recollect all the Heroscape pieces that I had lost from my childhood. One being that they're very expensive, but that most important reason is that I've learned to love the memories and let them go.
You wanna let this one go? Do you wanna let this one go?
A collector at heart. And why are you smiling over there? Go away! Close the door. I'm trying to read my script. Woman! Go away. Go away! Let me drink my vodka and make my silly videos. Love you.